This is the only story I will ever be able to tell.
Today I wanted to talk about The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I wanted to enter that discourse by sharing a theory about the book, so I hope this can be an addition to the ongoing theories and be part of that conversation. Just as many others, this theory is regarding the bacchanal. My theory is that the guys remembered that night pretty well, and even though they did not plan to farmer, they were actually trying to someone, and the person they were trying to was Richard. But to explain why, first we need to talk about Henry Winter. Henry was known for having a lonely childhood. He had a strict education that made him a cold and meticulous person, and someone who was way too self-aware of his surroundings. That is why Henry confesses to Richard that he suggested having a bacchanal with the purpose of losing control. He wanted to stop thinking, and overall to see Dionysius, as he explains. The point behind all kind of Dionysian rituals was to lose control. However, Henry and the rest of the cult did not want to just have a bacchanal, because Henry mentions feeling very attracted to the idea of these rituals for what they carried, that being terror, beauty, and sacrifice. And this is very important because here lies Henry's first lie. They did not have a bacchanal. How do we know that? Because a bacchanal was a Latin celebration that arrived at the Italic peninsula as an influence of the Hellenistic ways, but it was a regular celebration which purpose was to celebrate the god Baco. Baco is the Roman version of Dionysus, but it is not Dionysus himself, and as Henry mentions, he wanted to see Dionysius. Besides, these guys are studying Greek exclusively, so we understand that these guys, once they decided they wanted to see Dionysius, they wanted to follow the Greek rituals. Since he wanted to see Dionysius and have a proper ritual, he read text after text in which the god appeared, and knowing the meticulous nature of Henry, he would have analyzed every single one of them and then extracted the common pattern between all his resources. The pattern will be very simple. Someone or something, but mostly someone getting and as a sacrifice. Now let's remember how the farmer's body was found. Exactly. The intention behind this was to invoke the god. It was believed that to make him appear into the human world, he needed to be brought back from someone's torn pieces. Since he got by the Titans in this way, and Zeus resurrected him, which is why the idea of them doesn't sound accidental at all. With this concept in mind, it is important to discuss the next step, how they ended up running into the farmer. Henry explains that in the middle of the kissing the besties party, Camilla started running and he followed her, and then Francis and Charles did the same thing. So everyone started following Camilla. This was described as something arbitrary, but they were chasing her purposely. And Camilla was running intentionally as well. The Agrionia was a ritual in which both men and women participated by recreating the Minyades myth. Long story short, the Minyades were women possessed by Dionysius and had a sudden and unstoppable urge of eating humans. This ritual consisted of women that would run pretending to be searching for the god. The men played the role of the Dionysian priests trying to catch these women. According to some sources, these rituals included human sacrifices, and the victims were often outsiders to this rule. So, knowing they wanted to invoke Dionysius and that they probably followed the Agrionia, we can conclude that they intended to a human in order to have Dionysius appearing in front of them. So now how is that Richard was supposed to be the victim? Because in every single source regarding any type of Dionysian sacrifice, the victim was always pre-selected. This victim was always someone vulnerable and helpless. The victim is Richard. We have to remember that at the beginning of the book, once Richard changes majors, he realizes his classmates know things about him that they weren't supposed to know, and Richard started to wonder why. But the thing is that Richard was being observed, and what these guys found out about him is that Richard was someone easy to influence, had no friends, no money, no personality, and no one waiting for him back home, so he was a perfect victim. Henry never clarifies when the started, but something we know is that this happened at Francis' house and that Richard was there too. So basically, all those nights the cult was having rituals in the garden while their sacrifice was reading upstairs. The cult's mistake is that they were under way too many substances to follow their own plan. So yeah, they followed the ritual but ran into another direction and killed the wrong person. So now we will need to talk about Bunny. Whether Bunny knew about the farmer or not, it is not important. The important thing here is that when Bunny breaks down and confesses what he knows to Richard, he goes to Richard and not the police, which emphasizes the idea that the person that, according to Bunny, was in the most danger of this situation was Richard. But how does Bunny find out? Simple, by reading Henry's diary in Rome, because if Henry wrote about an innocent man, he definitely wrote about wanting to a classmate. We never see the full dialogue when Bunny confesses to Richard, but he narrates that Bunny tells a story that he has heard before, suggesting that that story might be something that Henry has told him, the story of how they killed the farmer, but the story that Richard might have heard could be any Dionysian story that he heard in class. Stories about women for the sake of a god, a story now about himself. So if Bunny knew they were trying to kill Richard, why did he take part of these rituals in the first place? The answer is simple. He probably joined the idea thinking they were going to have a regular urge. Henry tells Richard that they decided to kick Bunny out of the bacchanal because he wasn't taking it seriously, which could be true under Henry's way of thinking. So the guys might have kicked him out when they realized Bunny wouldn't like to do that, or Bunny distanced himself from this plan before he did something he could regret, which could explain why it took him so long to tell Richard about it. Then, why would Richard lie to the rest of the group and the readers about what Bunny said? Because the main goal that Richard has throughout the whole story is to belong and to be part of that group, and he wanted to join them desperately, and he will get his way by pretending to believe Henry and helping them to kill Bunny, since he was the only person that knew that Richard knew. So he pretended to be manipulated. But this theory is as well supported by the tickets to Argentina that Henry and the rest of the guys buy and that Richard finds so casually. I'd actually believe the guys weren't planning to run away at all, but pretended to in a very showy way to call attention of Richard, to then confess a bunch of half-truths to control the narrative of what happened, to get him to help them Bunny. I'm sorry, but these guys hid their crime pretty well, so there is no way they will escape in a way that was that obvious. The last point to go through is Bunny's letter. If I'm not mistaken, the letter was mentioned to be allegedly written by Bunny, but if it was mentioned or not, I always thought the letter was written by Charles, because one, the letter appears when he's nowhere to be found, and two, the letter blames the farmer's murder on Henry, and Bunny knew everyone did it. So that letter was Charles trying to blame everything on Henry, and we already know his reasons. So that will be it. To conclude, I would like to mention that I perceive the title of the book as a dual meaning, referring to the secret historical events of the classical Greece, like these rituals, and the hidden truths about what happens in the story, and how these two, past and present, collide. So yeah, I would like to know what you guys think of this theory, if it's something that's been commented on before. If it's not, if you like it or not, everything is welcome. And as well, English is clearly not my first language, and I haven't really spoke it in a while, but since most of the discourse about this novel happens in English, I thought this was the right choice. I hope I'm understandable, and let me know if I should keep making videos in English. Bye.